Welcome to the Lance Wallnau Show, going from coast to coast. I am the host with the most words on an opening. Anyway, we got my effervescent Mercedes Sparks here, anchoring on the left, and a special guest today, Ken Eldred, who's going to be speaking to us about a very important subject. Now, the subject that I want to focus in on right now is with all of the anxiety and the market confusion and the chaos that is now brewing globally, with what looks to me like God is shaking everything that can't be shaken. Where have we ever heard that in the Bible before? Economic systems, government systems. Is there a plan that the Lord has? And I believe that this book provides a rock of stability so that no matter what vicissitude of time you're going through, we got America right now, but listen, this book has been the bedrock of the faith of Christians for 2,000 years. And God knows how to see his people through any time of shaking if you're established in these principles, in these words. We're working on a special series right now with wealth creators. And these are the people that understand mastery on the business mountain, because I believe that Christians have a unique perspective of how to balance the affairs of this life with the agenda of heaven and come out on top. And what we discovered in our research is that God has a plan to take people from poverty to sufficiency, where you are not dependent on others. It's part of God's biblical plan that you should be able to prosper and have the ability to participate in any good work. And we'll talk about that in our series. But the sufficiency gets you by. Prosperity gives you something over, something more that you can begin to invest and sow because your needs are met, and now you have something extra. And then there's something even beyond that. You can prosper to the point where you become a pipeline, the ministry of finance. And that's when God gives you such a stewardship of resources that you're able to fund kingdom enterprises. And to a great extent, that's the secret sauce for how the kingdom advances, is stewarding the increase in a way that advances the kingdom of God. And that's the reason why Ken Eldred is one of my particularly favorite people to talk to on the subject, because sometimes, Ken, you meet a real sophisticated people, and they make it sound so complicated that it's almost like you have an MBA, but you never bewilder me when we talk about what's going on. You bring it down to left foot, right foot that any Christian could put into implementation. That's what a true teacher is. They take the complex and they reduce it down to like a rabbi. This is how you do it. And you've done it. You've gone through all three phases. You've gone from, hey, where am I going to get the money from, to having the money, to be faithful with the little, and then watch God give you increase. I wanted our audience, and Mercedes also wanted to hear your story, because really it's a supernatural journey. Most Christians, either they're over supernatural and they don't do the practical, or they become so jaded and cynical about faith and about God that the business actually can destroy them because they don't know how to handle the pressure of it. It pulls them out of God. They could even have increase, and wealth can pull them away from God. So it's not just that poverty is a temptation. Money, obviously, wealth can be a temptation. So let's talk for a second about your journey. And I asked you earlier a question, which I'm curious about, but we got tons of things I want to learn. One of them is, there was a moment when you went from not having to having. And I'm wondering, what decisions did you make to position yourself with God, to move from the place of barely getting by to having more than enough? Because there was an internal decision that you had to make at some point. What was your experience, and how did you know business and the business mountain was your calling?
Well, I actually did not know until I got to business school that I was actually interested in business. I didn't think I was. But when I finished business school at Stanford, I was so excited about what could possibly take place. And I saw myself as very successful being a manager of a $20 million division. That would be the career. That would be your goal. That would be my goal. And yet I wasn't walking with the Lord. I mean, this was a period of hedonism and living that was, not before God at all. We went through a tough time. We ended up having 7 of the top 10 stressors hit us all at once. Got married, ended up with an instant family, bought a house, my job changed. My father died. It's just all of them hit at once, and I just found myself saying, what's life about? And that's what started me on the trip. You mentioned at the top of the broadcast, and I don't want to get in a rabbit hole here, but you mentioned that, times are shaky, things are difficult. And people will say, well, Ken, you were in a better time, a different time. And I want to point out a couple of things. Number one, more of the major corporations were started in the 30s during the Great Depression than any other time.
Woo.
And then number two, when we started our company, the period was economic downturn. Things were really difficult. Jobs were not available. Things were tough. I didn't even have a job at the time, and I was living off what little income I had been able to save and what had been given to me because of my father's passing. But I was trying to decide, what's important in life. And I was struggling with God. I decided I really needed some relationship with him, but I didn't know what it would, and I wanted it on my terms, because I said, Lord, I want to be in business, and here I am struggling with a God I don't think I know or I believe in, and he's saying to me, so if I put you in a hut somewhere and have you preaching the gospel and in poverty, what's that to you? So what? What does that mean about how you treat me? And the decision, he said, I want you to make a decision regardless of what I decide to do with you.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, I guess I really can't continue. I give up. I need you, whatever you want me to do. But I thought, I'd seen a verse in Psalms that said, trust in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart. So I said to him specifically, Lord, you're going to have to change the desires in my heart. I didn't want to be a pastor. That's not what it was. And by the way, a couple of years later, somebody asked me to come and preach in this church. I was so excited. I couldn't believe it. What a gift.
Right.
So, God is amazing. So months kind of went by, and I was looking for a business opportunity. My partner and I, a friend who had tried to buy a company, and the effort had failed. And we sort of sat there licking our wounds afterwards, and he said, well, I've got a bunch of ideas. Half a dozen ideas of companies we could start. And I told him, no, I don't think I want to start something. I think I want to buy something if I can. That would be a better arrangement, and see if we can't build it. So he said, well, let me just tell you, what have you got? What else you got to do today? I said, nothing. He said, fine, I don't have anything I'm doing today either. So let's go over this list. And he started working through the list, and he was about halfway through when I heard a voice say, that's it. I thought, that's it? And I kind of looked around the room and thought, who was talking? I couldn't even tell where the voice came from. And then I realized that he hadn't heard it. He was still talking. It didn't interrupt him. And even he didn't even notice I wasn't even listening. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And finally it struck me, that's the Lord. The Lord's talking to me. So I stopped and I said, Jim, stop there. Back up, back up, back up. We're going to do that one.
So he's going down the list, and he goes back and back and back until
he gets to the one that I heard that's it. And we get to that one, and and I said, we're going to do that. And, 3 months of conversation, stretching, pulling, working on the idea with $5,000 or so, a grocery bag of connector parts, we built a $400 million business.
A grocery bag of connector parts and $5,000. And that's it. Puts you in a $400 million enterprise.
Yes. It took us, for a period of time, we were the fastest growing company, in the small growth, small company market.
Wow.
Inc. magazine listed us as number one, and we were very excited about all that. But, in the process of all this, God was showing me some things he was busy talking to me. We went on a retreat, and on that particular retreat, we had somebody there who was from the life insurance company, Presbyterian Life Insurance Company. And at the top of his letterhead, it said, 1 Timothy 5:8, those of you who have failed to take care of your families You're worse than the heathen. I thought, that's interesting. It sounds like God has a priority, in your life. So I wonder what his priorities are. And so I went home with that from that weekend saying, I'm going to figure out what my priorities are. And as I sat there, I was going through the Bible, I stumbled into Matthew 6:33. And it said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and all these things, the word all these things will be added unto you. I thought, that means he's first. I've got to build him first. And then the family, 1 Timothy 5:8, the family is two parts. It's spouse, whom you are one with your spouse, male or female. If you're female, your spouse or male, you're one. And then comes your children. So that's now I've got three. I've got number one is God, number two is my spouse, number three are my children. And then said, I really felt like the Lord was saying, your job is fourth, and the church is fifth. I thought, that's weird. That's really strange. But okay, so I sat down, like good MBA, sat down and said, what does it take to make God first? How many hours is that a week? So I put down hours. I said, it's going to take about 2 hours a day for me to spend with God, to know that I'm building a relationship with him in study and prayer. So how much time does my wife need? How much time do my kids need? I added these things up the way I saw them. I need 8 hours of sleep at night. It's the way, there are people who can stay up all night and do all kinds of things. I can't. A friend of my wife said one day, do you ever wake up grumpy? And she said, no, I let him sleep. So I set these things up. I put 8 hours of sleep in there, and I looked at what was left. And it turned out I had 40 hours a week. So I said, Lord, and this is the part that I didn't understand, but I said it. I said, Lord, you're going to have to run the business while I'm gone, because I can only be here 40 hours a week. And this is a startup, and we don't have any money, and I've got to do all the work, everything. So, Lord, you're just going to have to be there. And sure enough, we built this company on 40 hours a week. And people say, well, we know what you did. You told your employees, you guys are working like dogs because I'm not going to be doing the work.
Right. They worked 80 because you worked 40.
They worked 80. But no, I told them the same thing. I expected them to, because, if people get to work and they end up at work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and, people's situations are different. But if you're married, you got kids, you got to, you're trying to build your relationship with God, you really need to get these things in order, And the problem is that if after 3 years, when you're really good at what you do, you get divorced because your wife said, there's no time. You've given me no time at all, I'm leaving. And the kids don't even know who you are. The next 3 years, you're worthless. At the moment that you're most valuable to the corporation, you're no good.
Wow.
So don't ever do that to yourself. Try to build a life which has some, understanding of.
So just to make sure I'm clear on this, so I want the audience to catch this. You've built successful companies. You've taken them to market. You had them on the stock exchange, right?
All right.
And you got stories on that too. Where your principles could get tested, but you chose to keep your priorities right. I'd love to hear that story. But I want the audience to catch this. In the course of your life, you've noticed that seeking first the kingdom of God and putting God first, making the priority out of your spouse and your children, then being responsible to be excellent in your job, and also participate in a church community, some sort of fellowship community, that it's possible to do all of that in America and do it with some degree of with balance and get it done. You don't have to sacrifice one on the altar of the other. That's what you're saying.
That's right.
And you've proven that in your own life, and it's in the real front lines test of life. Friends, the news headlines prove only one thing, and that is that the world is actually a very fragile place right now. And that means the time to prepare is now for more instability. So let me ask you, do you have enough emergency food on hand to get you through a severe shortage? Most people actually don't. That's why I recommend the My Patriot Supply. And right now at lancewallnau.com/Patriot, you could save $150 off of a Vital 3-month emergency food kit. That's a kit that actually contains a whole lot of different kinds of meals. They're actually tasty. They got 2,000 calories a day in them. And we're talking about breakfast and lunch and dinner and a combination of different meals. That's going to be lancewallnau.com/Patriot. Save your $150. Get a hold of the 3-month food supply and do it now. Don't be a victim. Don't live at the last minute and decide that you're going to do it when they don't have the product. But take action. lancewallnau.com/Patriot. You'll be glad you did. Mercedes, what's coming up for you while Ken's talking?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of different thoughts. The first, I think, is, I just admire, Ken, your ability to maintain your character throughout all of this success. And then to hear your intentionality of, I thought I need to make sure God's first. If God's first, then all these things will be added. And so sometimes I even see in the kingdom, you can have a very clear call from God and be integrous towards that, but then lack the character and the same commitment to investing in obedience in that realm, like obedience to the call, but then obedience to character as well. And so I really like what you just outlined, because even for me, I'm thinking like, man, I need to do the same thing. How many hours a day does it take for me to put the Lord first? I'm like, why is it sometimes I feel like it's like whatever's left over gets given to God. It's like, well, when I'm in the car, I'm going to listen to the Bible. It's like, well, why? And it doesn't even necessarily mean because I'm a late night person, but I'm not an early riser, but I could take time during the evening and say this hour and from here to here, this is God's time. And this is investing in that relationship with him with that level of intentionality. I thought was remarkable. I had some other thoughts too as you were talking, and I wrote them down here on my phone. But one thing I want to also talk about is, Lance, you had mentioned this one time, that if the devil can't trip you up in terms of what your role is in the earth and your calling, then he'll promote you out of it. So that's another thing about staying integrous towards the Lord, because as you get promoted, sometimes you get distracted even within promotion. So anyways, just throwing little Lance
So that
nuggets
would be
in.
the test of not perseverance to get where you got to go, but have you ever had to make a principled decision to say no to an opportunity, to making money, or to a business or something where the opportunity is there, but it conflicted with one of your priorities or principles?
Yes, actually, I did. After I sold the company, it was in between business activities. I'd helped a company build a company in China, and because of the work that I had done, and it's a long story, unrelated to where I'm going. So, as a result of that, I got known, and I was invited to a meeting with a couple of my friends to look at a business opportunity. It was one of the top leaders of China. And he said, I'll tell you what we'll do. We want you and your team to build an exchange, a rare metal exchange. He says, I have control over all metals in China, everything. I want to build an exchange. He said, you guys will own 90% of it, and I'll own 10%. But the day that I'm out of office, I want this letter in place that says I get to buy the company from you for $1, and you get 10%, and I take 90%. It was simply a diddle, which most of the leaders of communist China are in the middle of. And it was just wrong. It wasn't, he had no intention. He wanted us to build it for him, which we could do, but it was really a way to get around being caught taking money from the communist Chinese government.
Right.
And it's just wrong. And we walked away from it.
Because you felt it was an unethical deal he was doing,
It's completely unethical.
even though it would have worked for you.
Oh, it would have been big for us, huge. This would have gone for probably 10 years. And the middles market in China would be billions and billions of dollars, and you take off a piece of that every.
You see why
every
God
trade.
doesn't give you those opportunities, Mercedes? You understand how come?
When he came over, he gave us silver ducats, ingots
Ingots,
as
yeah.
a gift,
Right.
to open the door. I mean,
Well, the transition from, I want to point out for the audience here, the transition from starting off like, well, Lord, what will you do for me if I give my life to you? And then the Lord said, hey, this isn't a barter and exchange item here. You're going to give your life to me and I'll determine what I do with you. Okay. Whatever you want to do with me is fine. Then the Lord gives you the business, basically the invitation into business. And while you're there, you learn sufficiency. You go from sufficiency to hearing God's voice, and then there's increase. Now, when did you go from, when did you start stewarding your blessing and realize that the prosperity you had wasn't for your own consumption, for multiple yachts and houses and all that stuff, which is fine. People could do that. But you've chose to steward that increase. What was the pivot point for you where you were prospering and starting to be blessed, but God began to deal with you about what to do with your increase?
well, to begin with, we didn't have a lot of income in a period of time, but we did have some. And the message came to me that part of worship is your tithe, your giving, And if you're really worshiping God, part of what you need to be doing is giving to God. That's what belongs to Him, because He's given us everything to begin with. So it was it was November 30, we started this company, official start date. It was at the same time that we put $5,000 into this organization, and a grocery bag of connector parts. And we're going to try to figure out how to make it financially somehow. When I heard that the church because it was a very difficult time financially, and the church was not receiving all the funds that they needed, they announced that there was not going to be a pastor's bonus that year. And I thought, so no Christmas gifts for the kids, no sort of joy over Christmas of things that would be meaningful to the kids. And I thought, that's just terrible. I can do something about that. And Roberta and I decided we were going to give them the money that would make up that bonus privately, and which we did, because we thought, well, I don't have any money anyway, so whatever I give away is not it's not like the end of the world. But God really honored that. He said, that's what I'm looking for. And he continues to, as things build, there was a time when the company went public, this company, and it was worth millions and millions of dollars. And I was out running one morning because we were doing exercise, because I needed to exercise. I said, Lord, this money is screaming at me. You've got to do something. Help me, because I'm going to drown. I just feel like it's drowning me. It's mastering me. I'm not mastering it. And sure enough, he did. The stock dropped dramatically for a period of time. But he helped me through that. And as we walked through that, and the company did fine. It was great. It was well paid. But the point was that he helped me overcome this concern of being overwhelmed by it. Mm. And it happened again years later, where went through a difficult financial time, and then, and trusting that the Lord was going to take care of me, and it was a great message he got, that Roberta got for me when I was going through a very, very difficult time. And the word that the Lord gave her was that, I know Ken's heart. He has inquired of me, and I will fill in the voids.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, that's exciting. To me, that was meaningful. And it was meaningful because I knew now that God loved me. It wasn't about money. It's about His love for me. So everything turned around. And it was at that point I said, it's all His anyway. And we began a new company, and that was the one that was the most successful of all of them that we built.
I want to just ask a question. We only have 2 minutes here, but I've met with Peter Sandaki and different guys. He's a billionaire Indonesia business guy. And I met his wife, and his wife had a prayer group that would intercede for him. And she had, and she'd admit this, no business. She wasn't an MBA. Her background wasn't business at all. But her prayer, partnership, and agreement with him for his business, he believed was what kept him from bankruptcy and bad decisions, because his wife would pray with him, pray for him, and she'd hear from God. And I'm just curious about that. Is that also the case with you and Roberta? Is she as much a partner in the Ministry of Finance as you are?
Absolutely my prayer partner. She doesn't understand. She says, if there's more than 2 zeros, don't let me write the check because I don't know what the numbers mean. But it doesn't matter. I mean, she prays for me. It used to be that I'd come home after a hard day. She'd polish my sword, take the dents out of my helmet and send me back to work the next morning.
Send you back out there. Go get him, Tiger.
And she'd be praying about all those things. In fact, I've got some great stories about how the prayer time she gave us had a huge impact on me and on the company.
So she'd hear from God and to relate to you what she's hearing. And that helped so the Lord put you together as a team. Mercedes?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on, what I love about your story, Ken, is that it's an examples of the gifts of the Spirit operating outside of the church for the advancement of God's kingdom within the mountain of business, and that the reality that those gifts are in operation in all 7 mountains there to push you towards your calling. So I love stories like that, especially in the business realm, where it's a word of knowledge. It was literally a word of knowledge that put you into that most successful company that you had. I mean, it's astounding to think that God is doing things like that. And that provision is not always a check in the mail. Provision is not always, oh, here's money in your hand. Provision is an idea. It's a strategy. That God will drop those things into your heart and your mind. It's fascinating to me.
So if you have questions for Ken that have to do with this whole field of his journey in business and this principle-centered kind of supernatural business life that's working, and he's at the level of the Ministry of Finance, which is that third level where you're a pipeline and you're determining how to invest and what to do with what God has given you. Ask me those questions, and that'll set us up for our next interview where people are listening and they've got questions. And we'll have a segment there where they can ask, well, why are you laughing?
Because now it sounds like Ken's going to get a bunch of emails from people that want Ken to invest in their company.
That's well, obviously. We'll send those to Mercedes. She'll vet those, and then Ken's not going to see those. But the questions that we can answer during a podcast, because I think knowledge is the main thing. My people perish for lack of knowledge, and that knowledge is critical. If you were giving advice to you said something very encouraging, that during the 1930s, businesses were started. During recession periods and challenges in the past, when your company actually came along with an innovative solution. So you actually have a helmet of hope on. You aren't pessimistic even during these times about how people can make it. You see that there's a way that God's people can come through these trying times financially.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we trust in God. It's not about, did I get this last month's paycheck, but is God going to take care of me? And he said, if he said it to me, he's going to say it to you. He doesn't love me any more than he loves you. It's a matter of listening and hearing and receiving, and rejoicing in his care for us. Kind of somebody said, can't wait to see what he's going to do in these hard times to solve my problem. It's going to happen.
Wow.
And we just need to rejoice in those things.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll stop this right here, and we're going to be coming back again with another interview and with more material, because I really believe that from sufficiency to prosperity, from prosperity to the Ministry of Finance, God is releasing, as you heard today, wealth comes in the form of many things. It could come in the form of assets, but it can also come in the form of access, where you're able to access the mind of Christ, the voice of the Lord, the ideas that God gives you, and that produces the ability to create wealth. It's interesting in Deuteronomy, the promise is that the people of God would be able to create wealth. It wasn't how to take wealth like government does. It's how to create. And the essence of what makes America great is its entrepreneurial genius for creating things. And only an environment such as the gospel creates over nations, I believe, can create a place where people are free to innovate and create. Think about how the world has experienced the innovation from one country, a fairly young country with a couple hundred years, from Carnegie with steel to Ford, to Edison, to right down to the processor, microprocessor in modern computers and technology. The United States isn't blessed with this level of innovation because of what's in our diet. It's because of what's in the atmosphere. That when God is honored and God blesses, God gives the ability to create wealth. It's a very Genesis type of thing. I will land it right here, and we'll be back again on our next episode of the Lance Wallnau Show.
Thanks for listening to this Lance Wallnau broadcast. If you enjoyed today's show, make sure to subscribe and share the episode. See you tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and my employees and I want to thank you for your continued support by bringing you the biggest bath sale ever. Get my 6-piece towel sets for the lowest price ever, only $39.96. His and her bathrobes, 50% off. Bath mats for as low as $17.49. And I'm also excited to announce the original My Slippers are back in stock. And now they come in even more colors and wide sizes. They're made with the same great patented technology. And yes, you'll still save $90 a pair. So get the biggest savings ever on bath sheets, bath mats, washcloths, hand towels, bathrobes, slippers, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code and get deep discounts on all MyPillow bath products, including our 6-piece towel sets. Regular $89.98, now only $39.96. Get all your shopping in while quantities last, so please order now.